we had broached this topic earlier about mathematics, how it's more productive, maybe more convenient to work with a certain framework because there is a lot of progress to be made, even though the foundational questions are still up in the air.
Right.
Now in morality, clearly this foundational question, maybe I'll give you 5 minutes with the Lego. Maybe you solve it now. Maybe it's open-ended by the end. But can you make the same case that with morality, maybe it's just productive to pick the best, or I guess the most reasonable framework at the moment and try to make progress with it? Or do you think in the case of morality, it is imperative that we solve this foundational question first, and then we can take the bottom-up approach that we spoke about earlier?
Yeah, I mean, I think that you want to hear distinguish morality from other normative areas. So it's clearly useful to have norms that kind of don't have any, like driving on the right side of the road rather than the left side or something. It's not like there's some deep principle justifying that, but what's justified is having a norm one way or the other. Yeah. So when it comes to norms generally, I think very often it's useful to just settle on some norms like we do, I think, roughly speaking, in the math case. That's an overstatement, especially because of the thing about arithmetic that I said. I don't think arithmetic is just, random. But when it comes to debates about fundamental value, like, what kind of life is worth living, what to care about, and now I'm using, notice the language of not factual language. I'm using the what to do language, what to do, well, there, who cares what follows from what, right? I mean, like, we just want to know what to do. We got one life, and hopefully, we do something that stands up to at least our own reflective criticism.
Sure.
And, so I think it's important that doesn't exit the realm of philosophy, the realm of scrutiny and debate. And you'll notice it hasn't. I think it's very interesting. I mean, if you just reflect on, you could imagine ethics having gone the same way as math. Like, we just settle on some ethical principles and then we prove theorems from those principles. One could certainly do that. And some people have done that. And, people in the effective altruism community, in a sense, have done that. They've settled on some principles about what we ought to do. And then they try to figure out, okay, now what will do this? What will maximize utility?
Religion as well.
Yeah, good point. Religion is another example. If it's sufficiently regimented and clear and, one's beliefs, it does that. But I think it's quite striking and interesting that at least in the modern and era in the 20th century and 21st century, there doesn't seem to be much enthusiasm for that, right? We want to keep the debates going. We don't just want to settle conventionally on an answer and then move on to other things. So I think that says something deep about what it is to be human. Like, for some reason, we're not content when it comes to fundamentally what to do, like what to do with my life, what to value, what to care about. I'm not content to just sort of defer. It needs to stand up to reflective scrutiny. I am content for most purposes to just defer that, okay, I'm going to be assuming the axiom of choice. So anyway, the answer, in my view, is that when you're talking about norms generally, it very often is useful to just settle on some norms, like driving on the right side of the road without justification, except that it's useful to have a norm.
Yeah.
But when you're talking about the most basic values, I think there's something deeply antithetical to, how we conceive of ourselves in doing that. And I think that's good. I don't think we should do that.
Do you think because there's such a big question mark on these deep values, on the fundamental values, it's just a lot easier for a simple man like me to just latch onto like an existing framework of what fundamental values?
Stop disparaging yourself all the time. What do you mean by easier? Because I kind of think there's two senses, but go ahead.
As a simple man, and I mean it, it's so hard for me to like break down and enter the zone of self-reflection that I'm just going to pick out what are the existing frameworks of values. Religion offers many of them.
Right.
Maybe, I guess there are other forms apart from religion. And I'm just going to pick the one that I intuitively agree with the most and just use that for the rest of my life and try to defend it. Do you think that, I guess the question is is this what's happening in the world at the moment? Because the question that you have raised up is such a tough question to answer, and like it might take years of research that fall now. People are just latching onto a framework that they think is the most productive and convenient. And that's where we are. But once you solve this question, I guess this would be the theory of everything in terms of morality.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So you said something really interesting though, because I don't think that what you said quite conforms to the lowly characterization you gave of yourself and the way you think about it. You said you're going to latch on to what intuitively strikes you as right and spend your life defending it.
Yeah.
I think that's very interesting that we feel the need to defend our moral views. We don't have to. We could just adopt some moral view and then shut up. And lots of other people have other views, but who cares? But somehow we feel threatened by the other views.
Yep.
And that, I think, betrays the fact that even if we sort of aren't all in, we do really want something that stands up to critical scrutiny from our own perspective. The defense is for us, not for them, I think often. We want to assure ourselves that they're wrong because it would be a real bummer if we were wrong. Now, why would it be such a bummer if it were just kind of a matter of driving on the right side or the left side of the street? So I think that shows that, we can have a sort of false consciousness about this. I think most of us do. I think most of us sort of have one foot in and one foot out of the reflection process. But it's very hard to pull yourself completely out. It's very hard to just, it's not even clear exactly what it would mean to not care what to value. You could have the value anything, but you can always then assess that value and you want to make sure that stands up to scrutiny. So,
yeah.
I think you're not as simple as you say you are.
That's the conclusion?
That's the conclusion.
I was looking for the ultimate answer about what I should value.
I'll email it to you.
I'll be waiting.